Good. God's doing good stuff. We've only got a few more jokes left for you. I know it's sad. Okay. Jesus, Moses. No, that's not what we're going to do. Okay, here's a good one. A priest who is an avid golfer decided to play hooky one Sunday morning and sneak off to the links alone. St. Peter, looking down, discovered him and immediately reported him to God. "I can't believe Father Mackenzie would skip his sermon," St. Peter said. And a few minutes later, the priest would score a hole-in-one. St. Peter, outraged, complained to God. "The guy is breaking the Sabbath, and instead of punishing him, you reward him with a hole-in-one?" And God answered, "Who's he going to tell?" Thank you to honorsomeonenow.com for being our Present Advice sponsor. And I pray that all of you go to the website and honor someone in your life who's made a difference. So, very good. The speech continues on, longestspeechever.com/donate. How much more? I have 40 minutes break? Okay. Well, hopefully, I don't know what the goal is, but I think we get a few more hours. Hopefully you're here for the long haul. Paul was planting a church in Corinth. It would be the Las Vegas of our day. And you get the sense that what happens in Corinth would stay in Corinth. He starts this Jesus community and he teaches them the way of Jesus, but he's surrounded by a culture that didn't want anything to do with that. He writes letters to address problems in the church, to encourage them and to set them straight on the path of following after Jesus the right way. These letters are helpful for us today because it seems like it was back in Corinth. The world, though it wants much of what our churches have to offer, which is true love, meaning, purpose, and a sense of community and belonging, that for some reason people are resistant against the church today. Church has become sort of a dirty word today, and not very well received by all people, especially those on the outside, but even some on the inside believe that as well. And Paul started this church proclaiming the gospel that Jesus Christ was crucified and risen for each and every one of us. That's the unifying number one mark of a church. And when we take that message out and when we do it in love and grace, great things are possible. So why in the world then is the church at large struggling? It's exactly the fact that because we're not taking the gospel of love and grace out into the world. And instead of taking the love and grace out into the world, churches are known for taking judgment out into the world. The very thing that we are known for is for being a people of judgment. Andy Stanley, a big old, he's actually a really skinny pastor, but he's a pastor of a big old church is what I meant. Says that churches have twisted the Great Commission from Matthew 28, which tells us to go out and proclaim the gospel and baptize and teach, instead to this: "Therefore go and impose my teaching, my values and worldview on all nations, threatening them with judgment and destruction if they don't obey everything I have commanded you." We've gotten it wrong. And because we've gotten this wrong, we've set ourselves unnecessarily at odds with culture. We've tried to coerce people into believing in Jesus by judging them and calling them out, rather than drawing them into faith by practicing and showing our love and grace for one another. Remember Jesus' words that they will know that you are my disciples by the way that you judge one another. Right? Right? No, you're not listening. Wrong. They will know you are my disciples by the way you love one another. Come on, people. I put that thing on a frickin' softball tee there for you. Jeez. You're getting tired. Don't even. No pity for you. And we have not loved one another, and because we have not loved the world like God has called us to, our churches and the state of our churches are an absolute mess. Today we want to talk about judging and loving. And to do that, we're going to take a look at a couple verses in 1 Corinthians 5 and a couple verses in First 8 verses in chapter 6. What business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? But are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. Expel the wicked person from among you. People today, I'm trying to see in my notes if I'm supposed to read through the rest of it or if I'll do the rest of it later. People today want their hands held. And they want to be told that they're right in everything that they're doing. But Paul says that's ridiculous. Paul says, I'm not even here with you right now. And I'm telling you, you have a place to judge those inside the church. And I'm telling you to expel the wicked person from among you. Earlier what would happen in 1 Corinthians 5 is there would be a ridiculous sin, a ridiculous sexual sin, a sin of incest. And they would actually let this guy continue to be a part of the community. And he wasn't even repentant of his sin. And so Paul is responding to this. And Paul says, the reason I'm speaking so harshly about this is because sin is such a big issue and there's always consequences to sin. Sin destroys people and marriages, relationships, jobs, and churches. And so, yeah, we have to deal with it. We can't sweep it under the rug and act like it's not there. Paul says, do the uncomfortable thing. Call a sin and deal with it. Pray for one another. Hold each other accountable. But why would we do this? The good news and why we deal with sin is because we can change. And God's given us the Holy Spirit. The same Spirit that rose Jesus Christ from the dead lives in you and I. And so we deal with sin and we call it out because as His people, we want to get better, we want to change, and that's why we come to church, that's why we're part of a community. And if we didn't think we'd get any better, we'd have no reason to meet and no reason to do church. But you say, Zach, the Bible teaches us that you're not supposed to judge others. How many of you have heard that, whether it's right or wrong? The Bible teaches us that we're not supposed to judge others. Whether it's right or wrong, how many people have you heard? Yeah. The number one quoted verse by all people we mentioned when we actually looked at this verse, by not just Christians but all people, groups have done studies in the past, is not John 3:16 like many of you would think. It's Matthew 7:1, which says, judge not unless you want to be judged. People say the Bible teaches that you're not supposed to judge others, to which Paul would say, I'm writing the Bible, guys, and I'm telling you this is in the Bible, that you are at times able to judge. The Bible doesn't tell us specifically not to judge. The Bible tells us who to judge. He hasn't even met this guy earlier in 1 Corinthians 5, but if what you're saying is true about this guy, then I've already passed judgment on him in the name of the Lord. And here's why he passed judgment, because this guy was in the Jesus community. He was in the church that Paul had started. He was a follower of Jesus, and he signed on to be a disciple. And now his behavior is way out of whack with the Jesus followers. In fact, the non-Jesus followers even think that this particular guy in 1 Corinthians 5, that his sin is crazy. When you type in Google, Bible verses on blank, on any particular issue, you go to a website, most of the time in Google, the first one is openbible.info. And they give you all the verses on particular subjects. Is that all right? Try switching batteries real quick. And so when you go to openbible.info and you look at, and you type the word judging, you'll see all sorts of Bible verses that deal with judging. Depending on the verse, and then depending on how many times you click helpful and not helpful, The helpful ones will go to the top, and the not helpful ones will go towards the bottom. And so, when you type in Bible verses on judging, thanks. The number one Bible verse on judging is which one? What do you think? Which one? Yes, exactly. It's easy. Matthew 7:1. It has 2,581 clicks on that, or helpful clicks. Number 2 on the list was Luke chapter 6, verse 37, which actually says the exact same thing, just in Luke's words. 1,884 votes. All the way down at number 46 on the list with 53 helpful votes was the 2 verses that we just read. People believe it is not our right to judge others in this world because they only hear Matthew 7:1 and Luke 6:37 verses. When if they're truly a follower of Jesus and know and understand the word, they will know the 46th most popular verse on judging as well. And because in this passage, Paul makes a distinction. In this passage, it doesn't tell us not to judge, but who to judge. And here's the question we have to ask that goes along with these 2 verses. Is what business is it of yours to hold a non-Jesus person or follower accountable for their behavior? And the answer is none of your beeswax, right? What business is it of mine to hold someone who hasn't subscribed to my set of beliefs and my set of morals accountable if they have not signed up? The reason that some of you used to go to church and that the church has become a nasty word for some of you in the past, or the reason some of you maybe don't go to church as often as you once would, is you felt like there was a group of Christians judging you for your behavior when you never signed up to act the way they wanted you to act to begin with. And I just have to tell you, that's actually not your fault. That's our fault. That's a group of people that wanted to coerce people through judgment rather than try to draw people through love. In verse 13, the church is notorious for policing the behavior of those outside of the church, while they do a very poor job of policing the behavior of those inside. So actually the exact opposite. You need to do a better job of policing those that are inside, is actually what Paul says, and lay off everyone else. They're not accountable to you. The ones outside the church have not signed up for what you've signed up and for your standard of morality. And so you have no business judging them. If you're a parent and you've ever had a kid, well, if you're a parent, you've ever had a kid. Okay. If you're a parent or you've ever been a kid, also, that's all of you, by the way, you'll understand this, that in your household you had rules, and when you had a disagreement, you had a judge, and this judge was mom or dad. It's not a good household that doesn't have rules or judgment. When my kids break the rules, I hold them accountable. That's the sort of thing that we are talking about. But once you join the church as a Jesus follower, whether that's our church or someone else's church, there's rules and standards and there's accountability, and we've been called to judge each other. But we have no business judging people's morality, the way they use their money, the way they use their lives, if they're outside of the church and never signed up what we signed up for. And Andy Stanley uses a key phrase that helps us memorize this, and perhaps you remember it from earlier in the year when we said it. Do you remember it by any chance? Exactly. Let's say that together. Mr. Ralph, that's why Ralph leads our Bible study here at the church, because when no one else remembered, not my lone, but one of the few Cleveland Browns fans who really knows the Word of God had my back. Let's all say that together. Judge the believing, not the heathen. Judge the believing, not the heathen. It's none of our business to judge what non-Jesus people do with their lives. And our goal is to follow Jesus to the best of our ability and help others follow Jesus to the best of their ability. and to quit trying to police the rest of the world from doing what they are doing. And when we get this right, people don't feel coerced, but they'll actually feel drawn. You weren't coerced into a relationship with God. You were won. You were drawn. I don't like the approach that we have today, or that we have in the past, that's still around sometimes today, with the guy on a corner and a bullhorn and a sign that says, repent. And then it lists a whole bunch of sins, some of the very same sins, by the way, that he's guilty of breaking. And says that if you do these things, you're going to hell. The guy has no relationship to the people that he's talking to. And he's speaking from a judgmental, prideful point of view to people that didn't sign up for what he's signed up for. The way to do it, to grow the church, is to invite non-Jesus followers to be a part of this movement, is to simply follow Jesus to the best of your ability, to love everyone. They will see what you have and want what you have, and you will draw them with your love, not coerce them with your judgment. So love one another so well that people are drawn to him, but do not judge those on the outside. 1 Corinthians 6, we're going to breeze through that. 1 Corinthians 6 is actually the people in this small church of Corinth were having a problem with litigation. And again, you might think, well, people from the outside are suing those on the inside of the church for something. And actually, no. The people on the inside of the church were suing people on the inside of the church. Right? It's like when two guys would bid for a painting. And these two would get so angry at each other. No. Sold! And can someone else make a painting for $800 now? Let's get Amy Sellers back. I'll give her a cut of that. But they're actually having a problem with each other and in litigation with their brothers and sisters in Christ. And so imagine the Bible study when you've got two people that are in litigation against one another in the Bible study together. It's a hostile environment. And a lot of times, and sometimes this can happen, even in the church, because we're a community and a family, albeit a pretty messed up, weird family here at theCross. We've got a lot of people who have skills and talents, and sometimes because we want to help support each other in our church family, we'll hire out people in the church family to do different skills. And sometimes, most of the times, it'll work out just fine. But sometimes it won't, and all of a sudden there'll be a dispute that can happen in the church. And in our country, it's similarly to Corinth. When someone doesn't do what they have told you they ought to do, our strategy is to hire a lawyer and to go for the throat, especially if you had a finger in your chili, right? There are 80 and 90 million lawsuits every year in our country. Do you know that 70% of the lawyers in the world are here in our country? 50,000 are being added every year. And not one lawyer has ever made it into heaven. Just kidding. Just kidding. I said I was kidding. But the litigious nature of our society creeps into the church, and it happened like it does today, back in the day of Corinth. And when you're asking for prayer requests in the Bible study, it gets kind of weird. When someone's saying, will you please pray for my court case? And the guy across the table, pray for mine too. And they're in the same case against each other. How do you resolve this? And in 1 Corinthians 6, what Paul is going to push for is, for as much as possible, if you have a dispute in the church, try to settle it amongst yourselves. Get someone who is in the church, who is in high standing and reputable, to discern. Perhaps you may have a lawyer in your church, but get someone in your church who is reputable and in high standing to listen to both sides, to mediate. And whenever possible, at all times, try to take care of what those disputes are inside the church so that the outside world doesn't have to see kind of some of the ugliness and the sin that can be in the church, because it gives a bad witness. And even though we know that we're sinners, we have to be careful what kind of witness we are to the rest of the world. God calls us his light into this world. He calls us salt. We are to represent God to the rest of the world. And so we want to make sure the witness that we are in this world is a good witness to the outside world. When it comes to court and in this world, a lot of people will make you feel guilty if you have to go to court. There are some times that courts are okay. But what he's saying is, if there's an issue in the church, try to take care of it in-house. Be concerned about the witness that you're being. But also, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you have to bowl over if you have a non-Christian that's done something egregious or horrible to you. We have a justice system, and God set the justice system in this world for a reason, to help you. And so don't feel like we're not there yet. We got 35 seconds. Good job. We did it, guys. But remember, the shirts that we're wearing, I don't know if you've ever noticed, the shirts that we're wearing say what? Yeah, and counting. So let's keep counting a little bit. I'm here for a little bit longer if you guys are here for a little bit longer. Okay. I feel like, so you'll have to just let me know, but I feel like obviously we've broken the record. Oh, sorry. Yes! 15. So I feel like once we actually broke the record, it was amazing in those few minutes, and a little bit of the wind came out of our sails. 50 hours, it's amazing to celebrate. And maybe a little bit of wind comes, and maybe it's just me that's feeling that. Maybe I have the wind coming out of my sails a little bit, but are we really okay with me keeping going for a while? I know a lot of you have given, you don't have to clap for me. But do we have the tech people, the witnesses, and the spectators? Okay. Because I do know that a lot of you have given up your weekend, and you have families, and you have kids, and I don't want to take that for granted. And pets. We already talked about pets in here. What's up? Yeah, I don't know if you heard that earlier, but as we're live streaming, we can actually see where people are watching from. And the last guy that broke the record, who's now in second place, the first loser, was from India. And we actually had somebody from India watching our live stream. And so was it him? I don't know. He's thinking, are you serious? I only had this record for like 2 months. Come on. Very good. So that's the end of Sermon 46. I've got 4 more to get to 50. I actually skipped several. I can go back and give you even more.
Did you ever do Ruth?
Say it again?
Did you ever do Ruth?
No, I didn't. That was one of the ones I skipped. And the reason why I skipped it is because I really wanted to get into the New Testament. I started getting into the older part of the further part of the Old Testament, and I actually needed to pick my energy up. And I know the New Testament a lot better than I know the Old Testament. But Ruth, Esther, and Rahab actually had a sermon on all 3 of the women, the prominent women of the Old Testament. So what questions do we have? 46, judge the believing, not the heathen. And the other message is make sure you are a good witness to the world, both as individuals and also collectively as a church. Do you have spectators signed up, or just if we start getting low for whatever reason, we'll figure that out? Okay. How many minutes? I should have at 14 after. And how many minutes do I actually have? 40? Okay. Yeah, I mean, at some point I'll want to use those minutes. They're freebies, right? But if we're having people that keep coming to church and they're coming to the 11 o'clock, I like a lot of people in the room. So the more energy that's in the room, if there's a lot of people, I'd rather stay in the room. But I don't know, that's just what I'm thinking. And by the way, the next sermon that is on our list is the sermon that got us into trouble earlier this year in March across the world. It's the tattoo sermon. So if you missed it, you're going to get to see it or hear it. Questions, though, with judge the believer, not the heathen. Yeah.
Does that mean then we can judge those that are in church?
Yeah. Does that mean that we can judge those that are in church? Yes. But hang on. I mean, but look at your heart. I mean, you people are looking at this like you're ready to pounce on somebody. That's not right. And what I was going to say before you guys are jumping all over ready to judge people is you actually do have to look at your heart. And why do you want to judge? And we do it out of love and gentleness. And in Matthew 18, it tells us the right way to confront somebody who is stuck in sin. We do it in private at first, and we tell them why we're concerned, and we're rooting for them, and we're praying with them. And then if that doesn't work, then we bring someone with us next time. And there's a pattern in Matthew 18. So does that mean judging those in other churches as well? I think if they're a believer of Jesus, and especially if you know them, again, always out of gentleness, love, and respect. But I think that, yeah, there's certain times that even those outside of the specific, our specific, the Cross Church, there are times that that's okay too. What other questions? Yeah.
I know some Christians don't like Christian decals or stickers
Yeah.
or fish on their car, and then they worry that something.
Yeah. Right. So some people don't like to put the little fish decal on their car or the cross. Is that why some of you aren't putting the cross decal on your car? We have car stickers. Because they what? They don't. Why did you say it? Because they worry they're going to be a poor witness. If they speed and if they cut people off and if they're flipping people off on the road and they have a cross sticker or a fish, if that's you, yeah, please don't. Please don't put a cross sticker on your car. But I actually do. I've heard that before, that some people don't put that stuff on their cars because they don't want to be a poor witness. And I guess the question to ask there is, why would you settle at being a poor witness? You want me to stand? All right, I will in a few minutes. And if you're having problems putting a sticker on your car because you might be a poor witness, maybe you need to change some of your habits that you've gotten into. Maybe you shouldn't be getting involved in road rage and speeding, and you should actually obey the laws that are in this world. Yeah, see, when it comes to speeding, like, this is the one, guys. Like, I do it too. I'm not going to lie to you. I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, please, Dolores, help me. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Judging is a hard word to say. You cannot approve. And actually, yeah, judgment, right, is getting what you deserve. And grace is the exact opposite, getting something you don't deserve. And so when it comes to the outside world, those who are not of the church, who are not the believing, but the heathen, we are to show them grace. But there is a time, and you may not like the word, but that's the word Paul uses in 1 Corinthians 5, and in that story that it may seem like a harsh word for you, but I think your heart is right. You don't approve of what they do, and you love them, and you want them to follow after God. So that's fine. I would have no problem, but also people can use the word in an appropriate context. Did I see Raymond? I know I saw you. I see your hand, unless it's a hallucination.
Does judgment have to be a bad thing, though? Can't you judge someone as a good person?
Yeah, does judgment have to be a bad thing? Can't you judge somebody as a good person? Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Judgment's getting what you deserve, and so if people are doing good things and helping a lot of people out, then yeah, you can judge them accordingly. And I think that's the cool thing about God too, is, a lot of people will say the phrase, well, God's watching over you, and they'll kind of use it as a negative connotation, like be careful what you do. But the other cool part about that is God's watching over you. God sees the good things that you do too. And when you may not get credit for any of those good things by any of the people in this world, you'll have a reward in heaven because God sees what you do. So that's a really good, insightful question. Oh boy. Crandall. I'm just going to get more and more honest with my feelings up here as I go.
I've heard it said before that we don't judge, but we can be fruit inspectors.
Whatever. Fruit inspectors, judge, yeah. Good. We can be fruit inspectors. So no tree, right? No rotten tree can bear good fruit, and no bad tree can bear. I said it wrong. But you get my gist. And yeah, we're fruit inspectors. So as people who have believed and received God's grace, right? The world sees God's grace through the good things that we do, through the fruit that are on the stems and the branches of our trees. Something like that. Scott. What? No, I'm happy.
When we deliver the gospel or try to deliver the gospel of truth, sometimes we're perceived as being self-righteous.
Yeah.
If we're true to Christ, we're not self-righteous.
Right. Exactly. If we're true to Christ, we're not self-righteous. And we have to be careful because that is a sin that many in the Old and especially the New Testament have had. And it's what a lot of the people on the outside of church view us as being more self-righteous. And so our righteousness is not in ourselves, but it's in God. But we can still naturally want people to follow after. And I think what I might do is with these breaks is just take a few 10-minute breaks just to kind of calm down for a few minutes and come back. And so I don't take it all at one time. I don't think I'll be able to sleep in the light of the day. And I just took an energy 5. It wasn't a 5. It was a nasty energy drink. Oh. Well, I had a 5-hour energy not too long ago. Yeah. Yeah. Why didn't they sponsor this event? Any other questions? Yeah, Sarah. Yeah. Sure. That our life is intact, right? So we need to be careful and make sure that our life is pleasing to God before we go and tell somebody else how to live. And that's exactly the story of Matthew 7:1. That cool, we got more news. It looks like, the easiest sermon as far as preparation that I've ever preached was Matthew 7:1. For whatever reason, sometimes sermons come really difficult and hard. But the easiest sermon that I've ever preached is Matthew 7, 1-6, the one that talks about the plank that comes out of our eye with the speck of sawdust, because Jesus paints such a sarcastic and exaggerated picture. But it's so true that when you've got a plank in your eye, you will do everything. Has anybody ever had a plank sticking out of their eye, like a 2x4? You've had a fly stuck in your eye, and that's a nuisance. But if you had a literal 2x4 plank stuck in your eye, you would do everything possible to get that thing out, and you wouldn't be able to look at the speck. So this is actually good timing for Fox to be here if they want to do an interview. I've got 40 seconds, and then I wanted to take 10 or 15 minutes. No, you guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We've got a couple questions that we'll come back to if we still have more, and then we're going to dig into the sermon that went international in March of this year, which is kind of a cool thing. So thank you guys, and I'll probably see you, and it'll either be 10 or 15 minutes. Tell the rest of the people who aren't here at the cross, our members, to join us. We want to see them hang out with us at least through 9:30 and 11, the times that they'd normally be here, so that we can get a lot of energy and make it through lunch and see where we're at. Amen? Amen. Good. Break. Yeah, I'm coming. You guys can talk, okay? Yeah.